Greetings, family. Welcome to the 101st anniversary of the Pettiford Weaver reunion. Different format this year, but we always have been known for adapting to the conditions around us. That's how we've survived so long and still managed to be in good shape. My name is Anthony Joel Artis. People call me Tony. I was born and raised in Kokomo, Indiana. My grandmother is Helen Olitha Pettiford Artis, daughter of Joseph and Martha Pettiford. My father is Merle Everett Artis. My mother is Yvonne Rosemary Smith Artis. I'm very flattered and honored to be able to do this for our family here and our friends, whoever else is joining us. What I did at first by the drumming and the singing was to invoke the presence of the ancestors. In African culture, most African cultures, the drum is known as the ear of God. So before any important ceremonies, gatherings, anything, celebrations, the drum was always played to invoke the presence of God and the ancestors at that celebration. So that's what we're here to do today. The drum that I played for you is called an ashiko drum, A-S-H-I-K-O. And the ashiko drum comes to us from Africa. However, this drum was made right here in Indianapolis because I'm also an African drum maker, and I made this drum. This is the first drum I made in 1999. Now, the importance of honoring the ancestors is an ancient tradition. My great-grandmother started this tradition of the Pettiford reunion to make sure that all the brothers and sisters in the Pettiford family would come together at least once a year after being spread out. We had people all over the country. Uncle Cassius was in Chicago, and people were in Indianapolis, and people in LA. We have people all over the world today. But we all come together for the great homecoming every year. And again, that's what this is. It's a little different, but it's still being. So the song that I was singing was to an African deity known as Elegua. Elegua is the keeper of the door between the spiritual and the physical. He's the one that's always called upon to open that door so that the ancestors can be present at anything we do. Now, the next thing I want to do is a ceremony called pouring libation. This is also a very ancient African tradition. It's still alive in our culture today, believe it or not, but you would not believe who is keeping that tradition alive. It's the brothers and sisters on the street. When you pour out a little bit of a fresh bottle of alcohol, pour a little bit for those who are not here, that's pouring libation. So we're going to use water today. I'm going to salute the 6 primary directions, and we will do that, and then I'm going to play a little more and explain the relevance and the importance of the ancestors. The importance of the libation ceremony has been a recognized ceremony for thousands of years. We pour fresh, clean water onto Mother Earth to acknowledge her presence We also acknowledge the 6 primary directions: east, west, north, south, above, and below. I'll start, see, this is east, yeah. Start with the east. The terms Omitutu, Onatutu, Ilitutu mean, Omitutu means cool water. Onatutu means cool road of life. Iletutu means cool house of life. Omitutu, Onatutu, Ilitutu, Omitutu, Onatutu, Ilitutu. I salute you in the east, Ila Aurum, El Este, the direction in which you rise, Baba Aurum, bringing the beginning of day and the end of night, a signal all in the universe is in order, everything is right, bringing your heat, your light, your fire to this day and to the night. Ashe. Omitutu, Onatutu, Ilitutu, I salute you in the west, Iwo Aurum, El Oeste, the direction in which you set, Baba Aurum, bringing the end of day and the beginning of night. Again, a signal all in the universe is in order, everything is right, bringing the calm, cool, peaceful serenity of the night, allowing our spirits to awaken and arise in the dream time while our bodies lie down, hibernate, and rest through the night. Ashe. Omitutu, Onatutu, Ilitutu, I salute you in the north, Ariwa, El Norte, the direction in which the principle of our ancestors dwell. Those of us who have gone before us, the principles of the past and the present. I salute you, Baba Ziyaz, I salute you. A salutation of gratitude, honor, and respect, for it is on your shoulders that we now stand. It's on the foundation that you provide that we continue to build the legacy of our families, our friends, and our communities. Bless us and protect us from the north. Ashe. Omitutu, Onatutu, Ilitutu, I salute you to the south. Gurusu, El Sur, the direction in which the principle of living in the now, in the present, in the immediate past, and the immediate future dwells. That's why we must always look to this day. For yesterday is already a dream and tomorrow's only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery. Today is a gift. That's why we call it the present. Ashe. Omitutu, Onatutu, Ilitutu, I salute you above in Ikoli Arun, heaven, El Cielo, birthplace of the universe, home for which we strive to return upon completion of our walks of destiny toward our highest destiny here on Mother Earth. Bless us and protect us from above, Baba Ziyaz. May your blessings rain down upon us like a gentle shower, cleansing us, refreshing us, revitalizing us, energizing us with your divine Ashe. May we utilize that divine Ashe in its highest and best use, utilizing all our talents, gifts, and abilities, knowledge, wisdom, and skills, energies, entities, and assets in their highest and best use. Ashe. I salute you below in Ikoli Aye, Earth, Mother Earth, La Madre Tierra. Thanks and praise, Ya Onile, for it is on your surface that we dwell. It is you that provides all of our physical needs in this life as we walk our paths of destiny toward our highest destiny in these bodies. Bless us and protect us from above. Bless us and protect us from below. Bless us and protect us from all the directions, Ya, for it is you that are our mother. Ashe. This instrument is known as shekere. Take the word shaker and put the syllable re on the end. And it's a gourd that's grown in the garden. When the gourd gets full size, and they come in different sizes, smaller than this, larger than this. This is a medium-sized one. And when it grows in the garden, when it gets full size, they cut the top off, take a wire or a stick and scrape the pulp and the seeds out of the inside, set it out in the sun to dry till it gets hard. Then they'll take either the seeds from inside, or in this case, plastic beads, weave them on a net, and put it around this outside the gourd. So when you shake it, you get a nice sound. You can also get a sound by taking the heel of your hand and hitting the bottom. So you can get different sounds. Now the gourd is also an instrument that is used in the ceremonies of the shekere. And the primary significance of the shekere is that it is also used to cleanse the atmosphere. So the shekere would be played, and if we were at the space in a circle, I will go around the circle and make sure that everyone felt the vibrations of the shekere, because it is a cleansing. It's like a sonic bath. that makes sure that only positive vibrations are brought to our gathering. Now, I'd like to talk to you about our current situation and how the past is always with us and how we have to call on the past in order to help us get through what we're going through. The ancestors in ancient Africa, the ancestors were revered and kept with us always. When they made their transition from the physical to the spiritual, they were not put in a graveyard. They were buried in the floor of the house that you lived in, so that the ancestors were always there to be with you no matter what. Today, unfortunately, we treat our elders and our young people, well, we actually mistreat them, especially our elders. The elders and the young people, instead of growing up in the home among the loving family, they are warehoused in daycare centers and nursing homes because our society has changed. I can remember, now I'm 69, I was born in 1951. I can remember always, my grandparents always being around. We always had a chance to go and visit each other, visiting all your cousins and everything, especially here in Kokomo. It was very, very, very blessed existence. But we've lost that a lot of times, and now we're going through an even greater crisis with the fact that we can't even get together to break bread together or do anything together because of the virus that's going around. But I am a believer that everything happens for a reason. So I think that one of the reasons for this epidemic, and everybody has to do this for themselves first. You can't help anybody unless you help yourself first. So that's why we always come together every year. Now, helping yourself first, like if you've ever flown on a commercial airline, you know, when you're sitting and everybody's first got on and the stewardess is giving the directions, she always tells you when the oxygen masks come down, if they come down, put yours on first, because you can't help anybody if you can't breathe either. So that's my advice to that. We need to focus on ourselves, focus on, there's one thing that I don't think we all get a chance to focus on. That is, what is it in your life that you like to do, that you would do even if you weren't getting paid for it in any form or fashion, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional payment. You just love to do it, and you do it regardless of what else is going on. How many people have time to sit and actually think about that dream? And then after you have visualized the dream, how can you figure out a way how to live that dream? Because a dream is merely that until you act on it. That's true of any thought or anything you have. It's merely that until you act on it. So we have to become, we always have been people of action, but we have to make sure that we keep up that level of action. That's why I'm so grateful to the younger generation in the Pettiford Weaver family that has taken over and making sure that that tradition keeps on. So one of the ways, like I said, is just to spend as much time as you can with yourself. For some reason, we're all scared to do that, and we fail to do that. So that's my big advice, is to love yourself, then love others. So I would like to sing another song. This is one of the ancestors. His name is Oduduwa. Oduduwa is credited with bringing the Egyptian culture, or Egypt is actually the European name for Kemet. Kemet is actually the correct African name for Egypt. And Africa, the correct name for Africa is Alkebulan. And so, but he is, Olodumare is the ancestor that is credited with bringing the Kemetian culture from Kemet over to the west to Nigeria. So this song that I'll sing will be to Oduduwa. Baba re mu Oduduwa, ero marele agolona. Are mu Oduduwa, ero marele. O agolona, agolona, o aguade, o aquo, agolona, agolona, o aguade, o babare muo dudua. Hero marele agolona aremuo dudua hero marele oh quo agolona agolona aguare oh quo agolona agolona oh aguare oh baba emu dudua yero marele agolona aremuo dudua ero marele. This last thing I would like to do is a special prayer. It's a daily prayer that I use to put myself right with the universe each day. The name for God in the Yoruba Nigerian culture is Olodumare. Olodumare, please surround us today with a higher consciousness and let the spirit of Iwakbele, good character, descend upon us. We ask for grace during this special time in which peace will descend upon our hearts and Olodumare's power will be stronger in us than it has ever been. We ask for a miracle for ourselves and those we love and anyone we are worried about. Let us send out the energy from our hearts and souls to encompass all of our loved ones. All of the people who have gone before us, the ancestors, the Egun, we ask them to attend to us, give us grace and hope, and walk with their hand in ours. Whether it is loneliness, depression, sickness, worry over a son or daughter, mother or father, or any relative or friend, let us lift up our worries and give them to Olodumare, our Egun, and the Orisha, the angels. We ask that there be peace in the world, that there will be a conscious effort not to destroy and pillage, and that there will be no more prejudice. We ask that the fighting stop, the homeless find homes, and that the love energy of the ancestors, Olodumare, and the Orisha visit every man, woman, and child today. We ask that we as a group can be as powerful as we wish to be and as strong as we know we can be. Send out our light to the world, not to convert people from their present belief system, but to be the silent comforter so that someone standing on a lonely street corner will get a burst of our love energy. We ask that our lives from this point on be easier, that our strength increases, and that our finances and health improve. We ask this not only for ourselves, but for the whole world. We ask that we all be protected from hurt, harm, and danger, and for a healing for everyone in our circle. We also ask for a world healing. We ask this in the name of God, Olodumare, the ancestors, the great and beautiful mothers, and the Orisha, the angels. Iboru, Boye, Boshishe, Ashe, Ashe. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Norma Scott Johnson, and I want to welcome you to the 101st Pettiford Weaver Family Reunion. I am the daughter of Irvinia Miller Scott and the granddaughter of Orinda Pettiford Miller. the great-granddaughter of Joseph and Martha Weaver Pettiford, and a proud descendant of Edmund and Sarah Carter Pettiford. I'm going to give you a little background information on how and why we are here today to celebrate the Pettiford Weaver family. I will start by telling you that Joseph was the fifth child of Tamar and John Milton Pettiford. He married Martha Ellen Weaver on February the 8th, 1880. One of the traits of this daughter of Henry and Sarah Burden Weaver that Joseph found most attractive was her sense of family. Their compatibility on this point was evidenced with the birth of 19 children, 17 of whom lived to adulthood. Of course, at this time, farm families tended to run large, yet with the increasing attraction of city life, Joseph and Martha found their home empty as their offspring pursued new opportunities in places like Indianapolis and Chicago. My grandmother, Orinda Pettiford Miller, moved to Indianapolis in 1910 and raised her family in the city south side of Indianapolis. Not only did Martha and her children show some concern that the grandchildren whom she saw far too infrequently would never know each other or their family history, she discussed her concerns with Joseph, and they decided to have one day a year when all of their children would come home on the third Sunday in August. And so on a Sunday in August 1919, at the date for this family gathering, they began the journey for 100 consecutive years of celebrating family. Of course, people coming home to visit have old friends to see, and for Pettifords and Burdens, friends and cousins are often the same. Because many of these families came from the same area of North Carolina and Virginia, they often married into each other's families. The tradition of meeting on the third Sunday in August persisted even after the deaths of Martha and Joseph, and clearly their sense of family has been transmitted to the children and their children's children. For 100 years, the Pettifords have come from as far away as California and Alaska to be with the family on the third Sunday in August. Given the obvious importance of family inculcated by Martha and Joseph, it was not surprising that last year, as we celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Pettiford Weaver family, that we had people come from everywhere, and we were recognized by the governor of the state of Indiana. I would like to thank everyone who showed their support last year. And as we journey into a new realm of celebrating family by doing this virtually as a result of the health crisis that we're facing, I would like to say thank you to all of the young people who helped make this possible. Now I'm going to spend a little time talking about my interest in the family history. I began to show interest in the family history as a little girl. At about 12 or 13, I started asking questions of my mother about why certain cousins were cousins. And my mother knew how to relay that information to me. And she would say, well, cousin so-and-so is such and such's cousin and daughter and granddaughter. And so by 1980, I had connected with enough family members to begin to think about putting together a book that would make sure that the information that my mother had given me would not be lost once she was gone and once I was gone. And so that is how I began to put together the Pettiford family book. This book traces the descendants of Edmund and Sarah Carter Pettiford from North Carolina to Indiana and to places beyond. And doing this research, I have found Pettifords all over the world. And so, but this book only addresses the connection between Edmund Pettiford and all of the Pettifords in Indiana. But I have been told that this book has helped them help other branches of the Pettiford family connect with their ancestors. So I would encourage everybody to take a good look at your family tree and ask, how did I get here? Who is my relative? And always, always make sure that you talk to the older people, the elders. And as our cousin Tony so beautifully displayed in his tribute to the ancestors, we will always be grateful to the ancestors that we have for leaving us such a wonderful legacy of the family reunion. So in order to order a copy of this book, all you have to do is go on the Facebook page for the Pettiford Family Reunion, and my address, my Cash App information is on there. My Cash App is the $, Norma 1846. And you can also email me at ncj218@aol.com. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jocelyn Whitaker, and I am president of the Weaver Settlement Foundation in Grant County, Indiana, which is right outside of Marion, Indiana. There are 12 people who are involved in the committee that came together because of something that happened over 3 years ago, and that was defacing of Hills Chapel in the form of Nazi swastikas and profanity and referring to blacks as niggers. With that came about the group itself. We started with more people than we actually had. And what we felt was important that we not lose the settlement and the legacy that was there for us. Weaver, as the settlement, began in 1820 with 5 people, 1 white man and 4 freed and former slaves and so on, that started out in the Carolinas, moved to Ohio, moved into Grant County. At that time, Grant County, that area was a swamp area. It was farmland, it had not been cleared, and so on. Families could not live there. From that outgrowth of that outreach grew a community. With that, families came to Weaver in 1840. But remember, for them to come there, that land had to be cleared, the varmints had to be moved out, and that swampy land had to be drained, and the trees and another vegetation had to be removed. From that, families moved in, and which became Weaver itself. With that was the growth and the movement and the matriculation of the legacy that was Weaver until about 1930. With that, as the community grew, so did families. It was nothing for a family to have between 8 and 15 kids, because as you know, the family were the labor for a community. And with that, those children were there to grow the community in itself. At one point, Weaver had 4 churches and 3 schools. But then they consolidated and so on. The students who went to the local school of Weaver, when they were ready to move into high school, they went to Madison Grant. And a lot of people would say, Madison Grant? Yes, because Madison Grant was the seat of that area, and that was the high school those students went to, Madison Grant High School. Madison Grant High School now entails 2 counties, Grant County and also Madison County, because of the scarce population. And both counties had large families because the families were the agriculture. The business was to grow the farming community, and we were self-sufficient. Weaver had its own people who were blacksmiths. There was a horse track at one point. There were churches there and so on. There was what we would say an old folks home or a senior center, where families, when veterans came home or someone did not marry, they went into the old folks home. With that, those families were able to live out their lives there. There was a cemetery there also. There was a campground and so on, our park area that is still in existence. There is Hills Chapel, which was founded by Bishop Paul Quinn. And he was a minister. Back in those days, ministers traveled back and forth between communities. And he started Hills Chapel, which is a member of the AME Church, and so on. So everything that you would need in a community was there, and it was self-sufficient. As if you were to go into the community now, you have no people who are actually living in the community. There are members of the original families who still own property there, and that property is farmed out and farmed by the farmers who are in close proximity. If you would go into the cemetery today, you would find 11 members of Weaver who served either in the different wars that occurred there, or they are buried out at the VA cemetery. Some people choose to have family members buried at the VA cemetery, and some choose to have them at Weaver. At the present time, we are clearing and we are working with the DNRA to bring the land up where the monuments that have sunk into the ground, land will be placed on those markers. And we are also, the veterans, we are going to, the VA has promised to clean up those markers that we can document that served in the armed forces and so on. As communities grow, as Weaver grew, and as industry started to move into Grant County, and with the boom of the glass industry, in which glass bottles and so on were made, the people at Weaver started moving into the city, the migration and so on. That migration, if you look at the history and what was happening in America at that time, that migration was not only happening in Grant County, that migration was happening all over the country, all over the United States, where blacks were moving from the South to the North for jobs, for industry, for commerce. Economic sustainability was very important. So as people move, the population of Weaver decreased and so on. So this was not just a problem that was happening in Weaver, this was a problem that was happening all over the country. And as people move, the community shrunk and so on. And as I said earlier, by 1930, Weaver, the mass population of Weaver had moved. We have 4 people who we can document at this present time who are adults and who are in their 90s who lived at Weaver. One just recently passed, and you will see information from him, Zen Stewart. But we also have Martina Casey and Zen's sisters and so on, who as children lived at Weaver. And then they moved into Marion. At the present time, we just lost Zen within the last couple of days. Martina Casey is 99 years old, and her mind is good and so on. Zen's sister, who was being raised at that time out in the community, is still alive and so on. So that legacy has been very beneficial to us. who felt that it was important that we save that history about our community. I did not grow up in Grant County, nor do I have family members to my knowledge who are from Weaver, but I understand the legacy of why we need to keep our history, because if we do not keep our history, our land will be encroached upon as farms are moved out. If we do not survey what is ours, people will move in. I came from Arkansas and we still own our family farm, but we have seen the encroachment that has happened to Weaver in our own community, and how best can we sustain that and so on, that legacy which is a part of us, and the next generation to pass this on to. It is a very rich history. The history of Blacks in America is all of our history. Black lives do matter, because when we do not look at what is history, we fail to understand from whence we came and where we are doomed to be annihilated. When you forget your history, it is lost. And if we do not pass that story on to our children, they will not know who they are and from whence they came. We came from kings and queens. We came from outstanding pictures, but the history books that our children see in school only see history that is swayed in one way. So that is why it is so important to keep Weaver and other settlements of that choice to be made sure that that is a part of what is happening with all of us. Our goal with the committee, it is composed of Blacks and whites. Our goal with the committee is twofold. I should say threefold. One, to recognize that Weaver did exist and to have something that is passed on to the future. We have lived in the past. Our ancestors lived in the past. We have told stories, but we have not documented what our history is. So that is one thing. We want to make sure it is documented. Number two, we want to sustain that history. Why is that history important? Because this is America. We help make America great. And when I hear somebody say America is great because of one person, I choose to differ. America is great because of the shoulders I stand on as a Black female, because I could not be here without those people being there. That's that legacy. And the third thing I think that is so important is we need to make sure that that legacy is passed on to the future and our children know what it is. There are people all over the United States, Blacks and whites, who are looking into history and who will come to Weaver and read about history, just as people are looking at Lyle Station down in Princeton, Indiana. And I am one of, or I should say my husband and my ex-husband and my son are descendants of the Lyles at Lyle Station in Princeton, Indiana. It is very important that we maintain and secure what is ours, and we pass it on from the elders to the present to the future. Our future is rich. We help make America great. From the backs of all slaves and from the backs of the indigenous people, because all you have to do is look at the beautiful shades of Black or brown, whichever one, you will see every shade that you can in our race to know that we helped make America great. And because of blood, sweat, and tears, and because of the money that was denied our ancestors, economic sustainability has been one of the issues that has plagued our community, and that must be stopped. With history, once we know our history, and once we know better, we do better. And that's why it is so important to leave that strong history. What is happening at Weaver, we have a church there, Hills Chapel. We have the Masonic Lodge, which played a huge and has continued to play a huge part of Weaver. We have a cemetery there, that our ancestors are there. Just as Monticello is important to all races, so is Weaver. When the committee came together, we put together a very, very arduous plan because we knew that each plaque would cost $3,000. Our goal was $10,000 to be raised in a year's time. And that goal thus far has exceeded what most people thought we would do. We have raised $7,000, but we still need $3,000. And that $3,000 can be raised by the help of all people who are interested in history. Our history is important. And once we get the signs up, the reason we wanted $10,000, we wanted to put permanent signs where people could not tear them down easily. We have written grants. We have put items in the Marion Public Library, plus also the Indiana Historic Library. We have some information here at the Indianapolis Library and so on about Black settlements. We have been very, very blessed to have a Black member, Paula Gillum, who sits on the Indiana Historical Society Committee, and that has been very helpful for us. And she is willing to help and give her services to others, because if we don't document our history, nobody else will. It is left up to us to do that. It is very important that we do that. If you would like to make a contribution to the Weaver settlement, it can be done several ways. There are members on the committee. One is Norma Johnson, who is a part of the Pettiford family. You can reach out to the Weaver settlement, and that is Post Office Box 3276, Marion, Indiana, with the zip code being 46953. You can go on our Facebook page and also make donations. We have cash apps there, or you can send the check. We do want to sustain this legacy, and with your help, we can do that. We cannot do that without the help of all citizens. And remember, it's not about color. It's about sustaining the history, the rich history in Grant County that is there. And we must not ever let our history be destroyed or taken from us because we don't take the time to either pay the taxes or we are feuding with each other about something. We need to look beyond who we are and save our history, because every day a piece of property is being lost. When we let a family home, farm, or so on go out of our family, we have lost an ancestor. As simple as that. That's why Weaver is so important, and that's why we need your help. If you haven't made a contribution, please reach out. As I said, our Facebook, our post office box, or a committee member. We need you to finish the race out.
Hi, I'm James Bell, and I just graduated from Marion High School. I would like to welcome you to the Weaver exhibit here at the Marion Library. I've been working with people from Taylor and IWU this summer, and we've put together a very big exhibit. It took a lot of work, a lot of effort, some ups, some downs, but it was fun overall, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
And I was born out in the community called Weaver, Indiana. And the community was named after John Henry Weaver. He had a grocery store out there, and he was more or less the, if you want to say, one of the richest guys in the community. As I remember, of course, there could be a few mistakes, and I know I've made them before, on where people lived. And this board, I had it made for our family reunion, and I would take it to them and show them where their heritage was. It shows the grocery store, and it sat on the west side of the road, and that was John Henry Weaver's grocery store. And then beside that, going west, what we call the crossroads, where 600 South intersects with 300 West. And at 300 West, if you go north all the way, it takes you through Michaelsville. And then, as I remember, there was a blacksmith shop. At least I was told there was, and it was owned by Carlos Pettiford. And I made a mistake. I thought it was owned by Henry Cobb, but I was wrong. And right near it was the post office. And I heard there's a way station. And a little bit further down is where the Johnny Pettiford home was. Still on the north side of 600 South, is now known as the Clearwater Park Road. And it was going west. And down what was little of a T road, which took you south towards Radley, I believe. That's where the Arnold Burton family home was. And they, I forget how many children they was in the family. And then coming back east on the south side was the Weaver School. And they used to have a play called the Old District School. And that was something that people from Marion all around would go back out there, and they performed it in the one-room school. The 300 West, Ira Smith had a house there. Then going further south was where Harvey Stewart had a home. Now you go across the road to the other side, which is 300 South, and right there was what was known at one time as a racetrack. And a guy named Alf Smith owned it. But later on it's the Von Casey farm. And then coming on east on that side of the street was the Bethel School there. Then a little further down across from that on the north side of 600 South, or the Clearwater Park Road, there was the Masonic home, and I think that's what the men owned. It was on the right-hand side of that road. And then on the left-hand side, going the same way, behind the Hills Chapel Church, which was on the Masonic Eastern Star part. That's where the church was. Then behind that was more Masonic. Terrence Faulkner Farm. And then there's a place called Lice J. Hill, north of that. And then next was the Wallace Jones Farm. And then further north of that was Thomas and Catherine Gulliford. And then coming on west to the 300 West, which was called the Crossroads, down at the intersection. Way up north was a Cora Mills home. I was told that by one of the neighbors. And then coming on further south was the Charlie Ward farm, which is still there. And then coming on south right there at the crossroad was the John Henry Weaver home. That's where it was. And to the east of that was the cemetery. That's the Weaver Cemetery, and at one time it had a entranceway to it. Even had a arch and everything, but weather and time has deteriorated it. But it's still kept up, I think, by the township trustees. But to my knowledge, that's my recollection of Weaver, Indiana, named after John Henry Weaver. I played football in high school, played independent softball, tried to play baseball, but I could never play basketball because I couldn't dribble the basketball. You need to dribble. But I was pretty active in sports. And when I graduated in June of 1948, I went in service in August. I served a year, came out, then the Korean War started, and I got caught up out of reserves. And when I got to Korea, all we had is what was known as a Pusan perimeter, and that was not much. Had the Chinese jumped in there then, they could run us all out with just sheer manpower. And here's the irony in the way of military. I thought I was pretty tough when I got out of high school. I tried to join the Marines, and they told me, well, we have our quota. I didn't know whether it meant race or just quota, period. So I had to join the Army. Then I had a nephew, lived in Gary, Indiana. And when he got out of high school, he came to live with us here in Marion. And the story I got that he and a few of his buddies went down to join the Marines. And he was the only one that passed. But then he got killed in Korea. Killed in Vietnam, killed in Vietnam. So the irony is I tried to join. We got our quota when he joined. There was none, and somehow God thought I got back, but he got killed in Vietnam. So
What was his name?
Thomas Jefferson Fears Jr. His name is on the courthouse around the thing on a post down there. And I had a brother served in World War II. He made it back. I had another brother in Korea. He made it back. And I had a brother-in-law. He was in the Korea. He made it back. And I think we were all there, the three, myself, my brother, my brother-in-law, at the same time, but we didn't know it till we got back home because we were in different places in Korea.
Wow.
And when I went over by ship, 14 days going, 14 days coming back. And some of them, I think my brother, he flew over, and they stopped in Hawaii, then kept on going, but we didn't stop anywhere. 14 days. Several of them, different ones, but the biggest one was the Pettiford, then had the Gulliford and Stewart, Jones, Mitchell, and Shoecraft, and there was a bunch of different reunions that was out there in Weaver, because that was our connection to Weaver. That they would go back out there, and I can remember they would sit down and talk and laugh and sing and even have a little bit of service out there. But nowadays that's taboo with the society we have now. The people say, well, that's old stuff. That's old stuff. And they used to have a lady named Stella Hayes. She would make some homemade iced tea in a big old crock. And she would sit there and dip it out and give it to you. And you talk about some good homemade iced tea. She did it. Then when we used to have ice cream, you had what they call a cold pack, real thick, insulated outside and a metal container inside with ice cream, and they would keep it cold. But and that was just fun time. We used to play games and stuff like that. But we just sat and fellowshipped. We didn't have all this music, boom, 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 bang, 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 you know. Sat down and learned who you heard. Time, that's where the Pettiford reunion was. Then it got to be such, that was the home of Mildred and Fred Beck. That's where they had a reunion down there. That was the Pettiford reunion. And then it went down to the Masonic home because it was much bigger. And even before that, I can remember the Pettiford reunion was across 35 and 22, across from where the Wilson farm is now. And the guy named Louis Jackson had an airplane. He would take people up a ride. The farm was that big out there. And that's who the Jackson Library is named after, out Indiana West University, that family. And I was there when they had the dedication. And but Louis and his wife, they've always passed away. And he taught school back there in Marion, a place called D.A. Payne at one time. Look at where the appliance place there is now, across from Mike Anderson Dodge. But he was a pilot, and I think he was even one of the trainers for the Tuskegee Airmen during World War II. And he and his wife Violet went over to Ohio, got involved in the educational system there. They made a mint, and at one time I saw in a magazine where he had designed a plane. You could fly it, or you can drive it on the highway, fold the wings up, drive it on the highway. So that was he was part of the, might say, Weaver connection to a degree too. And then a lot of us here in Marion, they don't know their heritage, but that's where a lot of their families came from. And ours came from, the Stewart family came from a place called Patrick County, Virginia. And it came up through Ohio and Indiana and stuff like that, and they were not all poor people, and they were not slaves. When you get to the census back in the 1800s and 1900s, early 1900s, they would list how much farm land they owned and how much money they had, stuff like that. So all of them was not poor. But before I started grade school, so it had to be in the early 30s, say about 34, 35, because my sister, she was born in 33 out there in Weaver. So that's that, we moved to town. And yeah, I can remember when you had to sit up in the balconies of theaters, so sit on the sides of the theaters, you only had one floor. A lot of restaurants you couldn't go into. As far as sitting down, you could carry out. Same way in the service when I was in Texas. We had our own service clubs and stuff such as that. Sat in the back of the bus, even in uniform. And starting at St. Louis, was known as Gateway to the South. They had a big old iron gate, and we called it the Iron Gate. You sat behind there. And even in uniform, didn't make any difference. But as far as the letter carrier part, most of that was gone by the time that I got to be a carrier. Well, a lot of people, they came in from different parts of the county as well as different parts of the country, different states. And I letter carrier for nearly 32 years. And in those days, people more or less looked out for each other. Relationships were good, and you didn't have to worry about somebody stealing something for you because we was all in the same boat as far as economics were concerned. And I got to know the people on the mail route, and I get to go sometime to weddings, and sometimes go to funerals and wakes and stuff like that. or even birthday celebrations on my mail route. This one family, they would invite me in sometime for lunch, even though I wasn't supposed to, unless I told the people at the post office what I was going to do. But they invited me for lunch, and sit there and eat, get a half an hour or so, and take on off. But I got a close relationship with the people in the postal business, and I tell people nowadays, if a letter carries like a bartender and something else, if he told everything he knew, somebody probably beat him up because of the things that we saw happen with different families and stuff. You just take to you with you to your grave. You don't tell people about what happened, but that was it. And I loved getting out and walking. Then we had to go to vehicles, and that would take away part of the walking. I'm just a physical type person. I love to do things I'd rather discuss in private, because what I was involved with is more than what they have out there now. And I knew that one person, I'll call his name, that he never got the credit, or doesn't get the credit now, for what we did in those days. His name was C.D. Banks, Claudius D. Banks. Now, he was a World War II vet, and he was Mr. NAACP at that time, but I'd rather discuss it in private and let you know some of the things that he led the fight for. But today, you don't see his name. If I did, I can see that lady walking, and she used to teach back there at D.A. Payne. She'd ride the streetcar or the bus to 36 in Washington and walk all the way back there. And then when school was out, walk all the way back up to Washington Street. And she was a member of Bethel when I was going there. She was a wonderful lady, wonderful lady. And at the time she was teaching, she couldn't get a job in the public school system. She could teach back D.A. Payne. Then later on, when things kind of broke down, she was a special ed teacher, and they had I think she had some little trailers down near the Coliseum. But yes, I knew her very well, very well. She was a gracious lady, wonderful. Attended as a child, and as I remember, it was an old wood frame structure, and they didn't have electric lights at that time. They had little kerosene lamps that they put on a little pedestal from the wall and have lights. But then I think it was 1955 that a rainstorm came and lightning struck the church, and it burnt down. Because I remember we lived in town, and someone gave us a call about the church being on fire. So I drove my dad and myself out there, and clear back as far as intersection of 37, 35, and 22, you could see the reflection in the sky. So when we got out there, you could just see it just slowly dying, the frame of the piano, and you couldn't put it out to nothing. And then they rebuilt it, I think, in '57. And William Perkins was the minister out there at that time. But and there used to be a big crowd out there because there was a lot of people lived there, and they went to church there. And more or less, the church in those days was the focal point of society. To go to Bethel or 10th in Nebraska for quite a few things, because I was a member there from about, I'm trying to think, he was 19, maybe 52, up until maybe it's a couple years ago. And I decided to start. And of course, the college church is right in my backyard anyway. You only take about 2 minutes to get. Yes, I go to the College West End Church, and Pastor Steve DeNeff He is a master at preaching and teaching at the same time, and I love to hear him, love to hear him. And when I first started going there, you didn't get to hear too many amens. People, I guess that's just the way they were, always quiet. But when I hear him preach and teach, and we agree on something, you will hear me say amen, not just amen. I let people know, and I've been complimented by him and his wife and some other people out there. I've got one philosophy in life, and there's something that apply, well, maybe a couple of things. If it isn't yours, let it alone. If it ain't yours, let it alone. And then don't treat people in a mean and nasty way, because life is too short.
Right, please.
I am Martina Gulliford Casey. But we visited my grandmother in Weaver. We go out there. In fact, they had the family reunion at her house on the Gulliford farm out there.
Mm-hmm.
And the family, her family, wanted to see her, and they thought it would be nice if they had a family reunion and everybody tried to come, which they did. And they used to have the reunion out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember as a girl, my grandmother would tell my mother, "You won't have to worry about bringing a lot of stuff. I'm going to cook the chicken and dumplings. I'll do that. I'll take care of that. And Minnie, which was her daughter, will take care of the other. And you can bring whatever you want."
Mm-hmm.
And we would go out there for the reunion. We didn't have a car, but there was a white family that lived not too far from us. He was a fireman, and he would take us out there. And I can remember my mother taking one of them big laundry baskets, and she'd have all the food and stuff in there. And we would go out there. And on the farm, my Uncle George, my dad's brother, and his sister Minnie lived with my grandmother. My grandfather had passed, of course. He was a Civil War veteran. And but they lived on the farm. They had hogs out there, they had chickens. He had 3 of the prettiest horses I believe I've ever seen. I remember that Sunday we went to church, as always, and the minister, Reverend H.D. Saunders, was the minister. And he got up, he opened the service, and he says, "Now, just relax." And he said, "Now, anybody that comes in here that's not supposed to be in here, don't worry, I'll take care of it." And he had his gun laying right there beside his Bible. So after the service was over, we had a good service, no problems. He preached a good sermon and all. And we left. When we got outside the church, the militia was out there guarding the area where the one boy that was hung, his family, he lived there. And they wouldn't let anybody go down on Nebraska Street, past that house. And this couple, the man and his wife, was in the car, and he was bound and determined. He's going to turn that corner and go down there. And the soldier told him to halt. And he kept going. And he threw that gun in that window and said, "I told you to halt." He'd like to turn the car over, getting out of there. And that was it. But I think that one of the nice things about the library now, that they've got the history and a lot of things in the library now, and it's very interesting. And I think it would be good for parents to take their children up there and let them see, because a lot of parents don't know a lot about this history, and it would be nice for them to know.
Well, I'm sitting here talking with you, James. Do you want to introduce me?
This is Miss Norma Johnson, genealogist for our whole family that we've been researching these past couple months. And so I just want you to tell us a little bit how you're connected to Weaver.
Okay, well, my grandmother was Orinda Pettiford Miller, and she was one of 19 children born to Martha and Joseph Pettiford. Martha was a weaver. Her father, Henry, and her grandfather, John, were the early settlers in the Weaver settlement. And they traveled here from Granville County, North Carolina. And they came here prior to the outbreak of the Civil War. There was some legislation passed in the southern states in the early 1850s as the Civil War was about to begin, that free African Americans were being kidnapped and sold into slavery. So the Pettifords, the Weavers, the Stewarts, and a number of other families in that area were free. And along with guidance from Quakers and other abolitionists, they left North Carolina and traveled west to the Midwest to avoid being sold into slavery.
Do you know why Weaver was picked though? Like, was it already like a certain settlement, they just came in and then overtook it, or how that worked? Do you know anything about that?
I don't know how they picked that area, but if you look at the trajectory of how they traveled, there were no freeways like it is now. So it took years for them to get here.
Okay.
So leaving North Carolina and leaving the county in which Edmund Pettiford, who is my oldest ancestor, he came from Granville County, which is in the eastern part of North Carolina. They moved, when I looked at their traveling area, they moved from Granville west to Stokes County to Wake County, which is where Joseph Pettiford's father was born. And then they left Wake County and moved further west to Greensboro, which is Gulliford County. Mm-hmm. And then from Gulliford County, they moved on to the outskirts of Virginia and North Carolina, Tennessee. And when they got to Tennessee, they got to Kentucky. And then they got to the Ohio River. And that's in Ohio, of course. And it's right there on the border between Kentucky and Ohio. And Joseph Pettiford was born in a place called Chillicothe, Ohio. And that's one of the first places that I found them outside of North Carolina on the census record. That was like around 1860. But now some of Edmund's children didn't stop in Ohio. They came on to Indiana. And I found a Beverly Pettiford in Indiana as early as 1860.
Okay.
And he was living in Weaver. So what looks like to me is that they kind of split up. Some stayed in Ohio, some stayed in Michigan, some went to Illinois, and some came to Indiana. All they knew is that they just did not want to be in the South.
Right, yeah.
When the war broke out.
It was not good down there. It was not good down there.
It was not good down there.
Yeah.
And some of them fought in the Civil War. in Indiana, you had Jesse Pettiford, who you'll find in Jennings County, Indiana, who fought in the Civil War. His wife, Anna Blanks Pettiford, received a pension from his service because he didn't die in action, but he died while he was still a service person. And she had children, and so she was given a pension for him.
Okay, that's good. So, as we have been, researching and doing all this research, and we came to you as one of the main sources. So I want to know why did you get into the genealogy, and what made you want to learn about your family history into the depth that you have done it?
Well, it had more to do with the stories that I kept hearing from my mother and my grandmother's brothers. Now, my grandmother, by the time I was old enough to have an appreciation for our history, my grandmother was had Parkinson's, and really her voice would not allow her to do a lot of talking. And then, of course, she died when I was like 15, 16, something like that. And so, but it was her brothers who had these stories that just fascinated me. They just, we never were slaves. We were free people.
Right.
Grandpa, and they would say things like, Papa was born in Chillicothe. And that's how they would talk.
Right.
My Uncle Robert, Uncle Foy, Uncle Cash, Uncle Robert was the best storyteller, and so he would say, yeah, they came in 13 covered wagons, and they was getting out of North Carolina because they didn't want to be slaves.
Right.
I said, well, Uncle Robert, why were they free? How was they free? They was just free people. I didn't know that they would. Why or how they became free until I started doing the genealogy. And when I went on the census records and I saw that their initial FCP was across from their name, that's when I asked the librarian in the Mormon genealogy library, I asked her what that meant, and she told me that it meant free colored people. She said they were never slaves.
Right.
And she said if they had been slaves, the names would not have been on the census record. They would have been property. So Uncle Robert and Uncle Cash, by the time I was really interested, they still were able to, they didn't have dementia or anything, and they were able to tell me. So one of the first questions I asked them was, did they remember their grandfather?
Right.
And they said, yeah, they did remember their grandfather. Uncle Cash said he was 10 when his grandfather died. And his grandfather was John Milton Pettiford. And I went to the records down in Indianapolis, found a death certificate for John Milton Pettiford, and his father's name was Edmund. Okay. So that was how I was able to find. And then I found an obituary for Edmund Pettiford that said that he was believed to be a little over 100. And that he had like 100 and some grandchildren and 13, he said he had 21 grandkids. I mean, it told all of this information. But the most interesting thing about genealogy to me is the stories that you get from just a little bit of information, like obituaries. I know it sounds gross, but obituaries tell you a lot. They tell you who the kids are, who survived the person that died. Tells you something about what the person did for a living. Tells you who they were married to. Tells you where they were born and when they were born. Because on Edmund's obituary, he was born in 1795. He was married to Sally, and he was married to another woman, but he didn't have children with that woman. He only had children with his first wife, Sally. And it tells, in his obituary, it tells when he came to Indiana and was living in Fairmount. And so that was, and then it said that, you know, all the grandkids he had, didn't name them, it just said how many he had, how many grandkids he had, which one of them was my great-grandfather.
Right. Yeah, because I know with me doing this genealogy, it's like you do the obituaries, and then you click one thing, and then you get another piece, and you get another piece, and another piece, and it just coming all together, and it's like a nice relief because there'd be some dead ends too.
Oh yeah, the dead ends. Yeah, the dead ends are frustrating, but I tell you, it's so rewarding when you make the connections. I used to have a cousin. Her name was Susan Hall, and I have to mention her because I miss her so much. Okay. Because she and I used to compare notes, and she was a Pettiford from North Carolina that I connected with on the internet, and then we did like two big what we call mega reunions with Pettifords from all over the country that came to this reunion. Well, Susan got sick, and she died, and boy, I miss her, because every time I make a connection, I want to pick up the phone and call Susan and say, girl, do you know? Because she had the same kind of memory that I have. It just clicked. It was like a Rolodex in her head. She could tell you, you know, and if I had a missing link, she had it. And if she had a missing link, I had it. Right. But, you know, I'm doing the best I can without her, but I still miss her.
I'm sorry to hear that. So the reunions, you've been to them. How are they? Are they lively? They fun?
Oh, they're fun.
Tell me about those.
That's me and my sister. That's the reunion. That's the best one that illustrates how much fun we had. Because that's my sister sitting on the ground. I don't know who this little girl is, but that's my sister and that's me. And this was at the Beck farm. Okay. And you just came and you ate and you played with your cousins. And the best part about the reunions is that you wait all year long to see the cousins that live so far away. Right. I have cousins that I'm still, you know, connected to from when we grew up together. Right. My cousin Brenda Jackson Murphy, she and I, you know, we're growing old together, you know. But we used to play together at the reunion. Joyce Pettiford Coleman, she's another one of my cousins that I played with at the reunion. And so even though you had first cousins that you grew up with, you had all these other cousins that were like second, third, fourth, and whatever. And these were all cousins that you played with at the reunion. And now my kids, who are adults, right, and they have kids, they grew up the same way, going to the reunion every third Sunday in August.
Now, were all the reunions on the Beck farm, or like when did it stop being on the Beck farm?
I can't remember when it stopped being on the Beck farm, but the reunion is now in its 100th year. So it was started by Martha and Joseph Pettiford. Then it went, when they passed, then it went to Mildred Beck, which was their oldest son's daughter. Okay. And then it went to the Masonic home, and I went to both the Masonic home and the Beck farm. But I was living in California when they moved it from the Beck farm, I believe, to the Masonic. So I would say either it had to be probably in the 71 or 72, but that history is available. I just don't have it in my head right now. And then from the Masonic home in 2017, we moved it to Motter Park. Okay. And we moved it to Motter Park because it just got so big that we needed more room. Yeah. And we needed a place where we could, you know, where the kids could feel free to play. They had more space to play and stuff. So. Okay,
so that August is coming up. So that third August is going to be at Motter Park.
Yes, Yes, and it's and we because it's the 100th anniversary. It's more than just the reunion. This year is the centennial celebration. So for the whole week of that, leading up to that 100th anniversary, we have different events going on. And one of them is the Marion Library special exhibit, which starts on August the 12th. Then you have the book signing that's being hosted by Beyond Borders in Kokomo. One of the cousins, Carlene Carlisle, wrote a book about her journey to adopt her son. And so that's another event that's going on. And then Saturday morning is our memorial service. To give honor to the ancestors, as well as to talk about where we came from and where we're going to.
Right.
The future of this reunion for the next 100 years is in the hands of the young people who planned the events for this year. And so we will have a balloon release that morning, and then that evening we have the big banquet celebration. And then Sunday we have the cookout and the panoramic picture. Everybody wants to be in the picture. If they don't come to nothing else, they want to be in the picture. Yeah, the big picture.
Everybody get dressed and come just for the picture.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you for sharing this information, this knowledge with us, and can't wait for you to see how this goes.
I can't wait either. I'm so excited. And I want to thank all of the students from IWU and Taylor University who participated in researching and putting together the celebration at the library. Because that's going to give people who may not know the exact connection to the Pettiford family, it'll give them a chance to see, oh, I know that person. I didn't know I was kin to them.
Right. So that's gonna be fun.
It's gonna be fun.
Hi, this is Herschel Lewis, chairman of the Pettiford Weaver Family Reunion. I would like to take this time to thank everyone who participated in our virtual 101st consecutive family reunion. I know things were difficult but we are in difficult times. So all of you who participated, the committee thanks you, Next Generation thanks you, because I know it was different, but as challenges come forth, Pettiford Weavers always meet the challenge. Continue to pray for our family, pray for your families as well. Continue to send in them donations. There's supposed to be a prompt following this video to where to send them. Again, the committee thanks you for your participation, and I'm giving a personal shout out to the Next Generation because they've done a fantastic job as they've always done. Thank you, may God bless you, and we'll see you next year in 2021 for our 102nd consecutive reunion. Thank you.